SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
For years, the American mindset has been that gaming is a 10th Amendment issue and the federal government would be overstepping to intervene. However, the explosion of event contracts on sports offered by the likes of Kalshi and Robinhood suddenly have states asking for the federal government to take action. Is this the issue that turns the tide on which branch of the government controls gambling? We'll discuss that as well as the death of a sweepstakes ban bill on today's episode of iGaming Daily. iGaming Daily is brought to you by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. I am Jessica Welman, managing editor of SBC Media, joined by Charlie Horner, media manager at SBC Media. And Charlie, I have never typed the words event contracts more in my entire life. Poor Tom Nightingale is all event contracted out. I don't think you and I have talked about event contracts. So are you familiar with what these are?
Yeah. This is something that sort of caught my radar maybe a couple of years ago. In regards to the political betting type.
Look at you ahead
contracts.
of the curve.
And I thought this was a little strange because I'm not American, and political betting here is
super
sort
normal.
of commonplace.
Yeah.
We do that, and that's fine. And I didn't realize at that time that it was such a big deal. And now it seems to be the talk of the town. You can't get away from events contracts, and it's been one of the biggest storylines of this year. And let's dive into it.
Yeah, so I mean, this one too, it has, and we'll get to it, like some pretty big ramifications beyond just, is this sports betting? So, as you mentioned, Kalshi kind of got the ball rolling on this in our industry where we were taking note when it started offering election markets. So for those who are unfamiliar, the Commodities and Futures Trade Commission is the group that kind of regulates these companies that do event contracts. And they've been around like 150 years. You can listen to past episodes where I get to tell you about like the weather and why it impacted this in 1875 or whatever. But they started offering election contracts. The CFTC, the commission that regulates them, intervened. This is regulation with a big quotation mark around it, because like you just get to like self-certify your markets and toss them on up there. You don't really have to get approvals or anything. And so CFTC intervened with elections, which is now in the Court of Appeals pending a decision. And then in the meantime, since the switching of administrations and the appointments at CFTC seem to indicate more openness in taking wider ranges of event contracts, Kalshi, Robinhood, Crypto.com have all started offering more. So with the Super Bowl, they started offering some contracts, and now with March Madness, they were offering contracts. And finally, states started to get a little fed up. So Nevada was the first one to send a cease and desist, followed by New Jersey. New Jersey sent them at a point, by the way, where they were offering event contracts on March Madness games taking place in New Jersey. For those who don't realize, New Jersey does not allow in-state college betting. So you can neither bet on New Jersey teams, nor can you bet on collegiate events taking place in New Jersey. So I think that was kind of the bridge too far for them, where it was like, you're not even allowed to bet on these in the state. So why you would be able to do this is weird. Kalshi fought back and has filed suit against both Nevada and New Jersey. Surprised after we've seen most of these other groups just kind of be like, okay, sorry, bye, to see Kalshi fight back on this one?
Yeah, it's quite surprising that but it probably reflects a confidence in what they're doing. They probably have a huge legal team and advisors who have probably scoured all of the relevant laws and regulations and thought, yeah, we're not doing anything wrong. And so the company, Kalshi, must have plenty of confidence in what they're doing is perfectly fine. Whether the states agree and whether the courts will agree is another thing in its entirety.
I mean, also, so this is just like a quick aside. The Nevada case got delayed for a few days because the judge originally assigned to the case is married to like a giant casino mogul. And so she had to recuse herself because it was just a little bit too close to home and they had to find another case. In the New Jersey complaint, it was interesting that it documented that they went back and forth with DGE trying to find some sort of middle ground that they could work with, because they were just like, listen, if we pull out of New Jersey, we potentially risk like our CFTC certification. So we can't really do that. The part that I didn't quite buy, though, is they kept being like, geolocate out New Jersey. What do you think this is? The Jetsons? We don't know how to do that. That might not even be technologically possible. And I'm just like, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be that difficult to put in geolocation on this, but you do you, Kalshi.
Yeah, I know a company or two who might be able to support you on that.
Check out the SBC portfolio of editorials from the range of geolocation companies that might be could help you out in this matter. I think it's again one of those, the principles of the thing. So there's a thing called a TRO, a temporary restraining order, where they were seeking like immediate intervention initially to let them keep offering games in New Jersey. Both parties kind of agreed that a TRO wasn't necessary, but they are very quickly in New Jersey moving towards whether or not there will be a preliminary injunction, which means like we're going to just say you can or can't be in here while this case is going on. Nevada not quite moving so quickly. So, I mean, it sounds like by early May, we'll know whether or not Kalshi can stay in New Jersey. In the meantime, Ohio has now sent a cease and desist. As of Wednesday morning, Connecticut has started an investigation, but not sent anything. Also, as of Wednesday morning, 9 a.m. So it's very early and nothing's getting filed just yet. But to date, there's nothing in the Ohio federal court system from Kalshi, but I'm guessing that's probably coming, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We've seen this year that the regulators are moving in waves, and once one regulator moves against a certain product or vertical, then they tend to follow each other. So yeah, you can guarantee that further action is in the pipeline.
Yeah, I would also say I wouldn't be. I mean, to me, it seems like Michigan. I'm like, where? Michigan's always first on these. Where are you at, Henry Williams? Did you take vacation? Why are you asleep at the wheel here?
Yeah, slow as poor.
Too slow. You know, it reminds me, though, of another case that is happening in Michigan that is somewhat related to this. Advanced deposit wagering, essentially online horse betting. There is a case where Churchill Downs is suing Michigan for sending them a cease and desist and telling them to leave the state. Essentially, like the one horse track in Michigan closed for a period of time and it wasn't seeming like it was going to open again. And accordingly, MGCB sent all of the ADW apps in the state a cease and desist. Hey, our state track that you work with is no longer in operation, therefore you can't offer this in the state. Churchill's like, the Interstate Horse Act, you know, of the Jimmy Carter era tells us that we can, and it doesn't matter what you think because this is a federal issue. And in the meantime, they, I believe, have granted Churchill Downs a temporary, an injunction or a temporary restraining order, one of the two, allowing them to remain in the state. It's kind of moot because in the meantime, they added dates to this calendar and the other ADW apps are back in. But we're getting to this problem of the federal law really coming up against the state laws. Charlie, how many times did I claim the federal government can't intervene? It's gambling. You'll never live this down, Jess. Before the election and in the sort of intervening the fact I have to bring up Donald Trump all the time.
We will never, ever mention the federal government. It has nothing to do with gambling in the United States. And here we are.
Traditionally, it doesn't. The 10th Amendment dictates that certain issues are up to the state, other issues are up to the federal government. And as we've seen for probably a century plus, if not longer, that's the way that it's been. But we're kind of getting to this problem of, is our prediction markets and event contracts gambling? or are they financial investments?
Yeah, this is a massive one. And to me, looking in, it smells like gambling. It looks like gambling. It's probably gambling.
This one's so hard, right? Because everything's gambling. This is just such a semantic debate. I think when it's, sports, it becomes a little more clear, the overlap, but people have been saying for years, like, speculating in crypto is gambling, buying NFTs is gambling, stock market trading is gambling. All of this is fundamentally taking an investment in something you don't have complete control over and hoping that you profit out of it, which is conceptually what gambling is. So,
yeah, I think the lines do start to blur though when it verges into sports. What happens next? Do we start taking event contracts on random number generators and calling it?
Yeah, I'm gonna take an event contract that 2 bananas and a cherry show up on this screen. Is that okay?
Yeah, exactly. But the lines are starting to blur. No, go ahead, Jess.
I will say kind of the difference with these, though, is that it is the Betfair kind of model or sport trade. This is peer-to-peer, essentially, where I'm saying, okay, I don't think Duke is going to win the national championship, and so I'm going to sell my position on it at this agreed-upon advertised price to Charlie, who is a monster and roots for Duke. Sorry, the Kentucky fan in me is coming out. Charlie's just staring at me like, I don't know what any of these words mean. But we're going with March Madness. Sorry, it's still in the air.
No, go for it. Go for it.
So there's not like a house, I suppose, which does make things a little bit different. Recall the endless DFS debates where it's like, well, it's against the house, so obviously it's gambling. And then it's like, nah, it's against another person. You're golden. Yeah,
it's so complex. And ultimately, the lawyers are going to be the big winners out of this. And we're going to have a big come together in the courts. And where do you think this leads to, Jess? Is there going to be federal guidance that the industry gets on this?
I think that you're probably going to, like you said, settle this in the courts. What's interesting, like, we haven't heard, the group we have not heard a ton from is the CFTC on this particular issue. They've been holding roundtables, they've been getting information. We know that the interim chair, Caroline Pham, is kind of pro-election betting and wider scope of event contracts. The name of the man who is up for the permanent job escapes me at the moment, but similarly is very pro-crypto, very like forward thinking. We know that the Trump administration is very, very forward thinking about all of this, but we have reached the point where the regulators are like, excuse me, this is what we do. And I think that you're going to have some sort of showdown about it. And the question just really is if the CFTC is willing to push the issue or not. I mean, Kalshi's certainly willing to push the issue, but I think it kind of, to me, where the federal group that regulates this lands is going to make an impact on how this pans out.
Mm-hmm. And not to put you on the spot, but if the CFTC or the courts, if it turns out that Kalshi, Robinhood, and the likes can provide these event contracts, and the regulators effectively lose, what's the impact of that on the regulated sports betting industry, do you think?
I think you've already seen that DraftKings is setting up to launch DraftKings Predict. I think FanDuel sees that as much as losing this creates more competition, there is potential for them to do a lot with it. Like in FanDuel Canada, you can bet on all sorts of goofy stuff, like, whether or not Trump will annex Canada and that sort of thing, that if you are allowed to expand the scope of what FanDuel can do, you potentially get people in that wouldn't be interested otherwise. Like, you know me, I'm an Oscars bettor. I fired like 2 March Madness bets. I maybe fire 5 NFL bets a year. And if I could bet on like, if I could trade Oscars futures year round, which I think I can, like, and I could the whole award season kind of leverage and play out my knowledge, I think I would be more inclined to participate with these apps. So I think that's where they see that there is some room here. It also gives them access to states that continue to prove to be difficult to get into, like California and Texas. All just speculation. And speaking of states that we can't get into, quick break, and then we're going to do fairly short little roundup on a bill that died that is worth discussing when we get back.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
Welcome back to iGaming Daily. We're going to take 5 minutes on this one because we had so much to say about the other thing. But there was a bill in Mississippi to prohibit sweepstakes sites explicitly in the state laws from operating that sailed through the Senate, hardly any opposition, and the House approved by overwhelming majority. But guess what? It died. And the reason it died is one of Charlie's favorite things about the U.S. system, which is that the House, knowing that the sports betting bill to expand from retail to include online sports betting in Mississippi died, decided to tack on sports betting language to all of the gambling-related bills that had advanced through the Senate and crossed over in time in the session, including this sweepstakes ban. Once it got back to the Senate's like, dude, we don't want this. Let's negotiate. They went to conference, which is what happens when you have a revised version of the bill that's been approved by both chambers. They couldn't reach any sort of compromise or conclusion, and it's dead. Charlie, I'm sure you were thrilled to experience your favorite part of our state legislative system.
Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely ludicrous, isn't it, really?
This is the Brit in you.
Yeah.
I'm just like, this is normal.
Yeah, I mean, it just reminds me again of the whole soapbox thing in Georgia a couple of years ago. If both the Senate and the House agree that banning this sweeps, the whole sweeps thing is a good idea, just sail it through. Just sail it through and we'll come to sports betting again next time. To essentially vandalize the legislation.
Casey Years just with a big grain of spray paints. Just add sports betting.
Exactly, but it is vandalizing the legislation to add on something which has already been thrown out, and let's be honest, is fairly unlikely to ever be passed through anyway. It's just, I can see why a lot of people have a lot less trust in the whole political system as they used to do when you see things like this happen on a regular basis. Because I'm sure it's not just sports betting either; it's other things.
It is funny though that it is just like a tried and true tradition of gambling related bills that it gets tacked on to pieces of legislation with great support. The Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act of 2006, that was tacked onto a piece of what is called must move legislation, which was like a 9/11 related Safe Port Act protecting our borders from terrorists kind of thing, and under the cover of night just kind of got tossed in. I'm just so used to this is how the sausage gets made, and I'm jaded and disillusioned that I hear you and I appreciate your disdain for this system. I'm just so used to it. The question for me too becomes like, do we ever get any sort of gambling expansion period or gambling related bills period in Mississippi so long as this issue remains? It kind of reminds me of like Denny Hoskins and VLTs in Missouri, right? Where it's just like, well, I'm going to tack this onto every dang thing until you listen to me.
Yeah, and we all saw how long that took to to be
We had to
resolved.
get him out of office and take it to the polls. And even then, he still found a way to make it more complicated than it needed to be.
Exactly, yeah, and I think this is probably where this ends as well. Ultimately, if you have a deadlock, then you need to break the deadlock, and that usually happens when voters go to the polls or legislators end up, resigning or retiring or just leaving office. So, yeah, I'd imagine this one's going to be a slow burn unless there is a dramatic political change or a few people have an epiphany.
All right, last question. Do we think, this was the one that just seemed like it was going to sail right through into law and get a sweepstakes ban. Do you think any other state has momentum enough to pass this session?
I'm not sure whether there's any off the top of my head where this is going to happen, but you can see where the wind is sailing.
Maryland making some headway. I'm hearing whispers. The New York one advanced out of committee, but it's Adabo's committee and it's his bill that I'm not surprised. It's the gaming committee, of course. But I think the biggest issue standing in their way is that there are just lots of things happening here across the political spectrum that, especially in states with shorter sessions, do we have time to worry about this? And I don't know for some of these how high priority this is.
No, I think you're absolutely right that we're in strange old times.
Indeed. All right. We are entirely out of time, but you can check out all of the updates that I'm sure there will be more of coming from the event contracts, lawsuits, and cease and desist space. We've got Justin Byers on the ground at IGA in San Diego, getting the tribal point of view of things. And Charlie and his team, you've got stuff going up all over the place, including a great feature on Internet Vikings that is here's why sweeps is gonna be a make or break issue for suppliers on SBC Americas. So check that out and check back in for another episode of iGaming Daily.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.